Nvidia stock had a green day today after kind of these massive downturns we have been seeing with the overall tariffs discussion and tariffs volatility. Now, on today's episode, I want to kind of take a closer look at why I continue to have that long-term mentality, right? Obviously, all the bears are out and kind of saying that a lot of these long-term YouTubers are just kind of giving hopium to the market. But as we're going to see today is the perfect example why I'm always a long-term investor, even though I also do believe that short-term we can see a lot of volatilities. I'm not saying the bottom is in. I am always constantly expecting stock prices to continue to drop, and I am a net buyer, especially this past few days. But today is a perfect reason why I personally wouldn't sell out of a company like Nvidia and why I continue to hold that long-term mentality. And there's also some other interesting news coming out in the semiconductor market that I think all semiconductor investors should consider. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so in the past few days, I've done a few videos explaining why I'm bullish in Nvidia during these massive downturns. And I always get a lot of comments asking, Jose, why don't you sell and kind of buy in at a lower price? The easy answer for me is I'm not a market timer, and I'm probably the worst market timer when it comes to this kind of volatility. And today is a perfect example. The stock market was going to open up pretty red. Nvidia was sitting in the 87s when it opened up. And we can see right now from its overall bottom, the stock is up 11% of the day. Can you imagine if someone out there who didn't have that long-term mentality, if they woke up this morning and saying, you know what, maybe I should sell my shares because I will be able to buy at a lower price? Obviously, that can still kind of happen, but imagine the stress that one would be feeling when just an hour after that, the stock market rallied like crazy. Now, there are a few reasons why the stock market rallied like crazy, right? Earlier in the morning, we did see that tariffs might be paused a bit, and then the news came out that that's actually fake news. And then throughout the day, we have been hearing discussions of maybe certain countries and certain progress being made in forms of trade deals and deals happening with the overall tariff discussion. Now, there is kind of a lot of tensions right now happening with China, right? China is definitely, if we kind of look at China tariffs right now, we'll probably see some of the biggest things that Trump threatens additional 50% tariffs on China as market slumps, especially as China kind of continues to threaten back with retaliation on tariffs. So the volatility is still here. I'm not saying that volatility is gone and things like that, right? China is a massive player, especially when it comes to the tech industry. So volatility can continue. But overall, days like today, imagine if tomorrow or 3 days from now or 4 days from now, we get some massive tariffs updates. And I was too worrying about maybe I should sell now because I will be able to buy later on. I'm going to miss out on this massive rally. So again, money in my portfolio is money I don't need anytime soon. I've been a net buyer. I bought on Thursday, I bought on Friday, I bought on Monday, today morning. But again, this is just a perfect example that news can come out of nowhere. And if you miss these rallies, these are the massive rallies that if you miss, your portfolio performance is going to underperform the overall market. So for me, long-term mentality, obviously today was a green day. I'm expecting many more red days, but I'm also expecting many more green days in my long-term investment thesis. And yesterday I did a great video, in my opinion, of why I am super bullish in Nvidia right now. Now, coming out for the market today, we also got some pretty interesting news from Broadcom, kind of a big player in the AI space. Broadcom did announce a $10 billion share repurchase plan with the market close. And if you watch my video 2 days ago or 3 days ago, it was 4 stocks that I'm very bullish in. And one of the things that I mentioned in that video was that I believe big tech companies are going to see that their stocks are very undervalued. And one of the ways that they're going to continue to invest their money, because a lot of these big tech players have a lot of money, is by increasing their buyback program. And I think Broadcom here kind of gave it to us first. And I'm going to say other big tech, especially in the semiconductor industries, are gonna follow the same suit. As I'm not gonna knock it down for Broadcom, but I mean, let's take a closer look at Nvidia. So this is kind of cash and short-term investments for Broadcom and Nvidia. Broadcom on a quarterly basis had about on their most recent quarter had about $10 billion in cash and short-term investment, while Nvidia had $43 billion, right? So I mean, I think it is very possible for Nvidia and other big tech companies that have multiple billions of dollars of cash saying, you know what, right now I'm buying a lot of these shares. Right now I'm gonna increase my buyback program, and I think that's gonna be very, very bullish for investors in the long term of things. The second thing is, again, very good for Broadcom, but if we kind of look at things like free cash flow, right? Free cash flow on this most recent quarter for Broadcom was about $6 billion. For Nvidia, it was almost a little bit like 2.5 times that, sitting at almost $16 billion. Again, if Broadcom is out here kind of doing this kind of buyback program, I'm not saying their balance sheet and financial and cash flow is bad. Their cash flow is pretty amazing, right? $6 billion. But there's other big tech players out there with way better balance sheets, and I think they're ready to spend that money. So I'm gonna make a bold prediction that within the next few weeks, within the next few quarters, we're gonna see companies announce some massive buyback deals, and Broadcom was a perfect example here with about $10 billion that they just announced, which really caused the stock to rally. So that overall creates this kind of bullish sentiment for a lot of companies, and for Broadcom, you can kind of take this Broadcom news, very bullish for Broadcom investors, right? Because if you're a Broadcom investor, this is kind of an indication that management really believes that their stocks might be undervalued right now, and they're willing to kind of take that opportunity. Now, this to me is also very bullish for the semiconductor space, right? Broadcom in general is really heavily in the AI data center market. So by Broadcom kind of increasing this buyback program, or increasing its buyback program, it tells me that they believe their business is going to do way better in the future. What business do they hit? The data center market. And then the data center market is expected to continue to do well. That obviously bodes well for Nvidia and kind of other semiconductor players in general. So that's what gets me excited for. While I'm not a Broadcom investor, it gets me excited for semiconductor investors like Nvidia and the big tech players. Next, I'm not a tariffs expert, so I've been using a lot of artificial intelligence, mainly Perplexity, to kind of understand how the overall tariffs work. And for those that are not familiar, right, especially for a semiconductor solution, right, a laptop has multiple components coming from different countries, coming from different players. Where does the tariff really take place, and at what point does the tariff take place? Well, right now, in the way that deals with kind of customs report is once you kind of put there's this final transformation, and this final transformation is pretty much exactly how it sounds, or substantial transformation is when the product is near complete and it's no longer individual parts. These individual parts have created something new. That's pretty much kind of like a laptop, right? When you kind of put all these laptop pieces, all these different kind of components together to make that laptop, that is kind of like that final substantial transformation. And wherever that happens, that's where you kind of get tariffs. So let's say a lot of substantial transformation happens in China, even though the components might be coming from all over the world, because that substantial transformation happens in China, that's where the origin of that item is really much dictated in forms of tariffs paper. So the first thing that can happen is just a restructure of supply chain, where companies can move maybe that final substantial transformation to a country with lower tariff rates. And that might be something that's going to happen. Obviously, that takes time, but we have heard from companies like Nvidia that they are working very closely with their partners to kind of try to move a lot of the supply chain around. Nvidia, again, watch my previous video. I explained that a little bit more, but Nvidia's partners are really focusing on moving a lot of manufacturing. And this is before these tariffs news. This is something that Nvidia has been working for in the past. The second thing that I thought was pretty interesting is AI mentioned that one thing many people aren't discussing is that for goods with more than 20% US content, the reciprocal tariffs are calculated based only on the foreign value content, potentially reducing your tariffs burden. Now, I actually believe this could be very bullish for TSMC's manufacturing here in the United States, and obviously Intel. I think this actually can be really important for Intel, because if for a lot of products, let's say kind of like your laptops, your phones, your AI servers, if one of the most expensive product is your AI chip or your maybe high bandwidth memory or what type of semiconductor product within there, and they are built in the United States, you can already kind of eliminate that portion from the tariff, right? Because even though semiconductors are not part of the tariffs, with that final transformation, a substantial transformation, you still kind of tariff the whole value of the product. But here, if 20% or more is made in U.S. content, then you can kind of reduce that that value from the total value being tariffed. And again, if semiconductors are a hefty portion of the bill of material, that can be a good amount of, hey, look, we're not going to be spending that much more money on tariffs, because if the more expensive, crucial part of the content is kind of eliminated, then that can help reduce kind of these tariffs pushes. So that's something that I do believe could be beneficial for TSMC and Intel here in the United States. So the final thing I'm just saying here with tariffs is there's so many uncertainties, and there's so many ways that maybe those selected companies don't get hit with the true cost. And that's why this tariff news should not be taken kind of completely as doomsday, as there's already multiple ways that companies can kind of work around it. So overall, I mean, even though it was a green day, it definitely is a green day. We've only had a few red days last week, and obviously red days could continue. But days like today remind me why, and should kind of show that reminding of why to be a long-term investor and why not try to trade. Because if you really ended up selling at that bottom today and didn't get back up, you lost a lot and a lot of gains. So I hope you guys enjoy. Take care. Have a good day, and see you all next time.